This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here, and you are on the Whole Horse Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have a guest who normally lives quite far from me, but today she's, as the crow flies, not too far away. I have Katarina Lundgren here on the line of I hope I get this pronunciation, MiMer Centre, and very excited to be hearing from you, Katarina, here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So you are in Seattle right now, and you are with Emily Keison, who has been a guest before on the podcast, and your first time in Seattle. So welcome to the West Coast.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit, Katarina, about your work and the center and what you're up to at this moment. I know that's a big question, but because you've got lots going on, but in a slight nutshell,
okay,
what you've got happening.
We started MiMer Centre like 6 years ago because we felt there was a lack of knowledge about horses, and we wanted to contribute. So we started this with just making MiMer is short for Minds in Motion Education and Research Center. So we started with very small pilot studies, really, asking questions about how do horses use their space and doing different testing with novel objects tests and stuff like that. Really small, actually. And I went to Mongolia and I watched I visited a research center there, and I learned about the wild horses and tried to compare them with our domesticated horses, and just driven by this, what is a horse? Because everywhere I went, I asked people about horses, and I got these very traditional answers all the time. Oh, they need this, they need that, they need to have boots, they need to do that, they need to have shoes, they need to be ridden, they need to be trained, they need everything just from this human perspective. And I never heard anybody say, like, yeah, from the horse's perspective, they might need this or that. So being a curious person, I started to ask, okay, how can we find out about all that we do with horses, but from the horse's perspective instead? Yeah. And simultaneously, I ran a little, I call it riding school, but it was named the Little Horse School because we wanted to emphasize that the horse is not only about riding.
Yes.
So we kind of forced everybody who came to our school to take part in courses about the horse as a biological creature, what he needs emotionally, socially, and also cognitively. And we had adults and we had kids, and we did everything. We did jousting, we did a lot of hiking in the woods, and we took them out for walks, as walking beside the horse instead of sitting on him, and we did, I don't know, everything you could possibly come up with a horse, just because everything that was traditional seemed kind of boring to them. Because it was like either you jump or you do dressage, and that was it. So being in this space of, okay, what do horses really like to do, and what do horses think about things? How do they want to live? what is good for them to eat, what would they choose if we didn't fence them in, and all these kind of questions that looped around in my brain. And then I ran into equine assisted psychotherapy and learning, and I took trainings in UK, and I learned a lot about that. And then I hanging out with them, observing them and all this, and I ended up in another space than most of the people I knew who had horses at the time, and felt kind of lonely in that. And then I kind of pulled back a little bit. I continued to take trainings. There is a training in Europe called Learning Animals. They were also talking about the horse as a cognitive being, and I did a little bit like that, but mostly I just stayed home with my horses and continued to observe them and just learn and read, and I started taking my master's in cognitive science, but I didn't teach much, and I wasn't so I stayed home and just explored.
I was gonna say you stayed more at the farm and more
kind
in
of
that place.
And then I met a bunch of people in like 2016, and I don't know, I started to talk to people more, and I took part in I was invited to help out with a symposium called The Horse is a Horse, of course. That is a gathering with both horse people and psychotherapists or coaches who just want to learn more about horses. And by taking part in that, I met even more people, and I ran into Emily at the HETI conference in Ireland. And we started doing these trainings, equine therapy together, and suddenly there were like millions of doors opening for me. People wanting to know more, and so everything I have been thinking about for like 10 years, suddenly I can use it and teach about it, and I'm just really enjoying it all.
How beautiful.
Yeah,
that's exciting. So you're on a bit of a tour, you're on a journey right now.
I am on an outward bound journey and an inward bound journey.
I was going to say both of them at the same time,
Yes.
The body is on a journey, and the mind, and I'm sure the emotions and the spirit.
Yes, and for the first time I feel that they're actually aligning with each other.
Yay. That's great.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I know you're in Seattle, and the course that you're teaching sounds absolutely, essential, really. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. I took a lot of trainings in different modalities and how to work with horses for equine assisted learning and psychotherapy. And what I missed in those trainings were more information about the horse role in this, and I, as an equine professional, what I could actually contribute with. I didn't really understand that, and every time I asked questions, I was mostly met with, "You will get this in a couple of years, and trust the process, and trust the horse, and all this." And me being really inquisitive, it wasn't enough for me. So when I met Emily at this HETI conference last year, and I had started to design these trainings, I asked her if she wanted to take part. So we brainstormed even more, and we came up with this training that is for filling in the gaps that we felt were there. Like, where is the research? Where is the real knowledge about who the horse is and what he's contributing with in facilitating growth in humans?
Yes. So tell me about, I would love to, because as I was sharing before the podcast with you, I have, definitely adventured into the world of equine facilitated learning and equine facilitated psychotherapy. And I actually work on a number of horses with manual therapy and energy work who are involved in that kind of work. And so it's one of those things I definitely feel a connection to. What are some of the main gaps that you've identified in terms of what's going on for the horses in those situations?
I think the big problem is that we do learn about horses, uh, and at some stage in our lives, and then we think we know, or we feel we know, and then we don't question anymore what we know,
Mhm.
and we stop looking at the horses. So we just we do what we usually do. We don't ask and stop like, hey, actually, why am I doing this? Uh, so you never really look at the horses, and by that you miss out a lot of communication.
Yeah.
So and when I went to Mongolia, I interviewed some of the horse nomads there, and I asked them, because they grow up with horses, and they kind of just they don't go to clinics and trainings and stuff like that. They just learn. So I asked them, how do you become a good horse person? And they say, yeah, you spend a lot of time with them. You
Mhm.
spend a lot of time with them, and you observe, you look, and you kind of integrate them into you, and they get to do the same with you. So you just know them on a really like mind body connected way. It's not like they read books about horses or anything.
Mhm.
and and most of the people I know who are horse people, they don't really go out and just look at their horses.
No.
No, they do. They go out, they get the horse, or they groom the horse, or they ride the train, they go to the farrier. They do,
Yeah.
but they don't look at the horse.
Hmm.
So our trainings are a combination of pure facts and knowledge and myth busting and all this,
Mhm.
and but also training in watching, looking at horses, and what do I see? What do I see? What do I see? What I see? And in doing that, you need to be aware of all your own lenses and all your own filters and all, cultural, personal, everything you taught or learned about horses, questioning that. Is this congruent with what I see?
Mm. Yes.
So
Yes. That's powerful.
it takes time.
I'm sure. Yes. And I'm assuming it's an ongoing practice. Like the people that are there, it's like the invitation is, this is something we do on a
Yeah.
daily basis.
And in the beginning, when you ask somebody who is not used to doing that to go out and ask, what do you see? And then they see, I see a horse resting. I see a horse eating. Yeah, but if you break it down, what do you see? Micro behaviors, what do you see? And starting to not assume so much,
Mm.
and not name it from what we name the stuff that we are doing, because we use this human concept and constructs when we describe what horses are doing or feeling or wanting, and all this. So all the the trainings are basically mostly about becoming more self-aware.
Yes, I was going to say, I'm sure there's a component that is very humbling in
It
the trainings.
it is because uh, yeah, we have so much preconceived notions about what a horse is, and then we have so much preconceived notions about what it is to be a human in this relationship. So you talked about this with the dominance and the hierarchies and all this,
Mhm.
that we have this
Mhm.
idea that we need to train them and dominate them and show who's the leader and establish some kind of ranking or something. Um, and they basically just want to explore us, and they're curious and wonder who we are. They know we are humans, but they want to know you personally, and we are like, oh, you need to obey me.
Yes, I need to create space. I need to.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah, you see that so often actually. I was chatting with someone about that the other day, how some horses are they're so sensory with like their nose and their muzzle.
Yeah,
And often they want to just like take you,
yeah.
like
Explore you,
they
sniff
want
you.
to explore you,
Yeah,
and how
yeah,
oftentimes there's this reaction in us to like, I need space and I need like, it's disrespectful, or it's,
yeah.
all these things, right? And these stories that we're kind of
And
falling
and
into.
and I think the reason why we're falling into them is because we're actually a little bit afraid.
Very much so.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's a no-no. You can't say that as a horse person. because like,
Right.
yeah. So you're, no, I'm not afraid. I need space.
Yes. Rather than actually owning, oh, actually, I do feel a little worried or anxious around.
Yes. So
Hmm.
everybody can talk, or start talking about it instead. Like, okay, fine. And when I grew up, and I wasn't around horses from the beginning. I came into this rather late. And I went to a lot of trainings and clinics and all this, and everybody told me you can never show your fear, because
Right.
then you will be very dangerous and the horse will become very fearful and dangerous, and that's your fault. And I was like, I can actually not hide my fears, because
I'm not very good at that.
no, I wasn't. But I really wanted to be with the horses, and I pretty soon found out that they didn't actually care. They
No.
no, they were just like, okay, fearful. We know about that. That's cool. As long as you don't pretend to be something else.
I was gonna say, and that's the big thing, is like I've seen, and I would love to be corrected, but what I've seen is the more that I or someone else can actually like really own and be real about their feelings, the
Yeah.
happier the horse is, the more kind of relaxed they are about things, because they're like, oh,
Yes.
okay, they get themselves. There's a self-awareness happening. Yeah.
Actually, yeah, and you're authentic, and that's so much easier for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're congruent. Yeah. And actually, that's much easier for people around you too. So
Oh, big time. I was going to say it's a great skill to develop. For sure.
yeah,
Very important. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Hmm.
You can practice with your horses.
Yeah, it's a great place to practice. And
Yeah.
for you, I would love to hear, because I think a lot of people get into that space and they're like, okay, I'm owning that sometimes when my horse is really in my space, I feel anxious or worried. What
Yeah.
is kind of the next step for you? Is there, because I know when I was talking with Emily, there was a sense that horses, yes, do set boundaries in terms of what their own personal space, comfort level is, and that certain pairs may not even touch much, like, or at all. And other pairs will be, I see my diva mare and her friend April are like the pair that like are all over each other all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I'll go out to put her halter on and she's like, hold up a sec. And it's like 15 more minutes of grooming if I let her, they're very into it. So
Yeah.
for you, what is there a way to kind of more, honor that horse, but also be able to kind of keep ourselves like feeling safe, or, setting a boundary in a good way, good, healthy way?
When I have corporate groups or people coming for coaching or something, I have one safety rule, and it's like, if you feel uncomfortable in any kind of situation, move to a spot where you feel comfortable, and that is kind of taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
If you feel you're too close to a horse, or he's too curious, or he's all over you, or whatever, move.
It's so simple.
Yeah, it's so simple. But we have been taught this, that you need to move the horse.
Yeah, you can't give ground, right? Like,
no, because he needs to respect you. But if you start with just respecting yourself and your feelings, and okay, I feel comfortable, I feel I want to remove myself from this, so do that.
wow, what a
Yeah,
concept.
what a concept.
Yeah, and there's one of those myth busters, right? Because for many of us, like you say, we've been trained and conditioned that we can't. I mean, I recall this, like, don't give an inch.
Yeah. Yes.
Don't give an inch.
Yes.
In my natural horsemanship training and things, it's like that. You have to go. You're moving feet. You're going. And obviously since then I've done a lot of rethinking about that, and it's amazing though how ingrained it is.
It is an interesting concept. Why would horses compete with the ground with you, about the ground with you? It's like, I need to stand on the spot you are standing on. It's like, why? You're not even territorial. It's like,
It's not how we roll, man.
no, it's no, but I know it's very ingrained in many people I meet. It's like, I can't move. I need to show the horse that I am, that he needs to respect me.
Yeah.
But you're not even respecting yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that word. That word holds so much charge. I mean, I see it so much in the horse industry, and that I truly believe now that there's just so much myth built up around this word, this concept of respect and disrespect within, you know, the way that we are with horses. So what, you know, you've shared a little bit about that sense of, you know, where that comes up. What have you seen in your studies around why that's so predominant or prevailing, I thought?
Part of it is, I think, built on that we are fed with these pictures and films about horses where we see stallions, you know, meeting each other, and they have this fight to decide who is the leader and all this, and all the chasing off of each other, like, you need to leave and I can stay. So I'm staying one is the one who is the deciding one, the one who won it all. But that's so misunderstood. Most wild horses, groups of wild horses, when the stallions meet, they know about each other and they greet each other, and most often they just pass each other with their groups. They don't engage in fighting or out in nature. Horses are a lot about preserving energy in of the year, so they don't engage in behaviors that are wasting energy for them. They do that in the short time where there is an abundance of grass and food for them, mating season, and when the foals are born and there are some playful.
Yep.
But then for the rest of the year, it's mostly just maintaining energy.
Yeah.
Engage in this.
Well, I had a podcast or a webinar just the other day with Sarah Sloty, who I don't know if you met yet.
Yes, I met her.
Yes, and she was discussing the Polyvagal Theory.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was very fascinating because, of course, in Polyvagal Theory, it makes no sense to spend a lot of time in activation, in fight flight. You know, it's very, very energy consuming and depleting.
Yes, and I actually read a very new research article just the other day that says that horses who are in a bit of a traumatic situation for them, it's not only that situation that actually wastes energy for them, because they now can see that even like 1 week after, they still have stress responses from that.
Yes.
So they need to run with stress in their bodies a long time. So it makes much more sense to avoid these situations.
Very much so.
And since there are very social animals, really depending on their family group and all this, they are about avoiding.
Big time.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not looking for these situations where they measure their power against each other or something.
Yeah. Well, and you see that in terms of even their survival instincts is to go into herd and be in flow with herd. And it isn't until, you know, maybe like the herd is split up in some way, you know, by a predator, that they would go into these other activation states in, you know, in a wild situation.
They do that when there are predators around, and they do that in different ways. I had an interesting discussion with Lucy Reese about that.
Yeah.
Because she has been looking at how they behave when pumas are around.
Oh.
And how they form this, as you say, they move in flow,
Yeah.
like in cohesion, and they move away like together, like one body almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been talking about the people in Mongolia, their predators are wolves instead, and they form rings around. They stand still and they form rings around their foals and their vulnerable horses in the middle.
Yep.
Mares, and then the stallions help run around and chase the wolves off. So
Wow.
different strategies depending on what environment they live in and what the predator is, how they hunt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure. And so, I guess the next sort of piece of that is then what is the impact of domestication, in particular when there's resource scarcity.
In the beginning, when I started this quest about who is the horse, what is the horse about, who is the horse, and I kept thinking like the horses we have in our pastures or in our stables are kind of something we have constructed.
Yes.
It is not really a horse, or he is of course, but because how they live, how we breed them, how we bring them up and keep them and train them and all this, they are so far from how the horse is able to take care of himself out in nature. And we are so we are dependent on taking care of them because we are so into caregiving that
Oh, yes.
for us it's so fulfilling to kind of almost wrap our horses in bubble wrap.
I have used that exact term before.
Yeah. So we keep them, we do stuff with them that they don't really understand, and then we are really worried about them harming themselves or not being able to take care of themselves. So I don't know.
Yeah, I see it as out here on the West Coast, because we live in a rainforest, and the footing can be very, very wet and hard on horses. We have, some very interesting scenarios that horses are living in. So very small paddocks, isolated from other horses, electric fencing, in a like, lots of horses in a certain area, but not able to actually like touch each other really or be in connection. And you definitely see very much a change in their health and the ways that they cope and their stress responses, a lot of ulcerations, like, and the stomach, like there's all these pieces that come with that environmental situation.
And actually, I think for me, welfare is very much about giving the horse space to be a horse.
Yep.
And actually solve his own problems. And he can do that if he has pastures big enough to find like space where he can get away from flies or where he can get away from rain or whatever, and different surfaces to walk on because that's good for his hooves, and roll and all this, and trees to scrub against when it is itching, and a lot of diversity of plants and finding different stuff to eat and so on. And instead we try to give them that in a very artificial way. So we feed them with this fabricated food, hard feed, pellets, and we give them a lot of supplements, vitamins and minerals and all this without really knowing what we are doing. And we then we put fly masks and fly blankets and all this on them, and then keep them from solving anything on their own.
Yep.
So they have all the care in the world, and we can fulfill our need to take care of them, but they don't really have any agency or any possibility to solve or take care of themselves in any way.
It sounds like in a way, it's kind of like a dysfunctional relationship. You're thinking
Yes.
of a mom raising a child, and you're like, can they go out on their own when they grow older, or will they have the skill set to do that?
We have a lot of problems with that now, the generations growing up, and they are like not able to problem solve or
No.
take initiatives or very curled kids.
Yeah, right. And we've been so loving, and it's like, oh,
Yes.
and
very well intended.
Yes, very well intended.
Really. Yes, we are. But we are kind of overdoing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we are kind of doing that with our horses as well.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is there's sometimes a space for a certain type of almost like a certain type of tough love, shall we call it? A loving, a loving space of that, but allowing them to kind of, make their own mistakes and sort things out in relationship with other horses. And
it's actually interesting because there are new research saying about kids, because kids now they move so little.
Yes.
So their bodies are not able to like sit on a chair because they fall off.
Yeah.
Because the proprioception, their bodies are not able to learn how to move in space, and the bodies don't know where they are in space and all this. And if we keep our horses in really small pastures from they're really small, and they will have the same effect on them.
Yeah.
And we can add, of course, that their muscles aren't strengthened, and their tendons and all this that needs to be put under some pressure and hardship for it to grow and be strong.
Totally.
But also just that their bodies actually they're not bodily aware. They're not.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you see that with some horses. You'll put a horse out in the middle of a field, and they're just like, like stunned, paralyzed even. I don't know what to do. What do I do? Right.
And also people ask me, what do you think about like why horses are they're stumbling all over the place, like they can't, if you let them out in the forest they will fall on their noses because they don't know about anything else but very flat surfaces, for example. So
yes, for sure. And that proprioception has never been neurologically built into their systems. Do you see that can kind of can a horse be rewilded in your mind? I
think they can, and I think we need to rewild our horses and ourselves.
Yeah, I would agree very much with that.
Because we're conditioning ourselves as well. So we're actually just doing to the horses what we're doing to ourselves.
Yes, we're all a little overly domesticated, I would say.
Yes.
Yes.
We need more mud and more barefoot and more grass in our hair and all this.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. And, it's that sense of the oftentimes, and I'm sure you see this with your workshops, that self-awareness of like, where am I projecting my own maybe fear of that wildness, of that expression, of that, what this horse actually can be.
And it's very much so. We have a lot of discussions about safety on our trainings. We are very, very focused on safety. And that is a projection, I think. And I don't know how it is in your country, but in mine, we have doctors writing books about this, that we feel this need to be overly safe. we tell our kids like, don't fall in the staircase. It's like we can give them orders about that. It's like,
yeah, be careful,
yeah, yes, don't touch, don't move, don't do that, don't fall over, you can hurt yourself. It's like, yeah.
Yes.
And how are people or horses then allowed to learn to take care of themselves, and both in mind and where they have their bodies?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember even for me as a kid, I mean, I'm turning 40, but like my mom would put us outside in the morning.
Yeah.
We lived in a city, and she'd be like, I'll see you at dinner.
Yeah.
Like, have a good day.
Yes.
Sort it out.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yes. Independency and agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we would find things to do. We'd use our imagination. We'd go all over the place. We'd range around. And it was great. I mean, we learned how to be in those spaces in a really different way. Mm-hmm.
Take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Find solutions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we don't see that as much. And I'm sure that can lead to like an even more of this sense of the bubble wrapping with our horse, where our horses are concerned. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we bring people into this space and learning with equine facilitated learning or psychotherapy. And if we are, as practitioners, are very, very worried about the safety, we will project that.
Oh yeah.
Like the world is a very unsafe place. we need to like stay away from that, not doing that, and have rules about everything. And that's no, that's not promoting a sense of competency or owning your own solutions, or being able, or feeling safe, or anything of that we actually want to transfer.
Yes. Wow.
And I 3 or 4 years ago, I had some problems with a bad farrier, so I had to unshoe all my horses. Or maybe it was even longer, 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. And I did that, and I learned a lot, and since then I have never shoed them again. But I also unshoed myself, and I learned a lot about bodies and how everything affects each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like we walk in shoes with heels, we will always walk a little bit like leaning forward.
Yeah.
And how that affects our hips and our backs and necks and stuff. And for the same for the horses, of course, being shoed alters how they keep their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Since I have always walked barefoot with my horses.
Beautiful.
And people usually get upset about that.
Oh,
like,
yeah, I bet.
You cannot take care of yourself. And that, yes, I actually can. And I use that a little bit provocative when we have trainings and I walk barefoot along the horses, because I want to have these discussions about safety. What is safety? Is it
safety?
Is it putting on your steel hooded, whatever you call them in English, your purse?
Boots. Yeah. Or
yeah. Yeah. Is that safety, or is it actually knowing where you have your feet?
Yes. Is it actually being body aware?
Yes.
And in tune with your horse?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just actually reading before this about some big, huge organization trying to take away the ability to ride bitless in competition at all, because it's deemed so unsafe to do so. And this sort of projection of, well, I wouldn't ride that way, so it must be unsafe for someone else to ride in that way.
Yeah, and it comes from our fear and our need of having control over everything.
Yeah,
we can't make rules about everything, and we can't invent gadgets to make stuff safe. And the more we do, we have this illusion of control.
Yep.
And we actually, I think we create more accidents by
I was gonna say, Yeah. That's when the wrecks happen oftentimes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's funny because my horses, when I started to work barefoot, they became much more aware of me and my feet.
Mm-hmm.
First, they were very like, "Wow, humans have feet. This is really interesting."
What's going on down here?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. They're very. So every time I come to a new place now, the horses usually haven't seen humans with feet, so they
No,
are always very interested in exploring my feet.
I bet.
Yes, very sniffy, very interested.
What are these weird things at the end?
Yes, humans have this. They've hidden them from us.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Oh my
But
goodness.
they never step on my feet. They
Mm-hmm.
never do.
Mm-hmm.
It's very they're actually more the feeling that since they see that I have these feet, they are more like concerned about them. Like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's not
But
like horses go around stepping on other horses' feet.
no, I don't think they do.
I've never seen that anyways. I don't
No,
know.
no. It's very interesting. Like, take
Well,
off your
yeah.
shoes and be more mindful about your feet.
And you become, my assumption there is that you become more grounded because you're more aware of your feet,
Very much so.
right?
I feel the ground and all this, of course. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I'm more grounded. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Which is always a good thing with our horses.
very much.
They
Yeah,
like that very much.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hence why yours were probably pretty happy to get their shoes off.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's very cool. Well, I tend to walk around in, my Birkenstocks and things with my horses, and I quite enjoy it, and I love riding with no shoes on.
Yeah,
One of my favorite things. Mm-hmm.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's very freeing to feel that. So
And for a human, you have so much sensory input from your feet. So I usually say when I put my shoes on, I become like foot deaf because I miss so much information.
right.
And
Yes.
that's the same for the horses actually. If you shoe them with iron shoes, they
Yes,
also
yeah, I've definitely found that with horses, that sense of they have a really hard time being grounded.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and because they don't get the input.
No.
So no,
No.
there is a lot of other things happening too when you shoe them, but that's
Yes.
yes,
Yes, that's a whole other topic for another time,
yes,
I'm sure.
yes, yes.
Absolutely. So coming back to the workshop that you're teaching, I know you have a couple of other things that you're working with. So there with that workshop, it sounds amazing. And I at the end of this podcast, I'd love to get some more information. And I know as well that you're doing your master's thesis, and the topic sounds very interesting. So I just wanted to invite you to share a little bit about what that is focusing.
Yeah, I have always been very fascinated by the interaction between humans and horses. Like actually the space that is between us. What happens in that space? What is it that we create together when we have interactions? And especially when I learned about equine assisted psychotherapy, that
Mhm.
what happens between the client and the horse in these situations. And so I'm trying to write about that. And I looked around for theories that I could use. Like part of it is attachment theory.
Yes.
You can use that.
Yep.
And then I found the intersubjectivity theory that actually explains a little bit more, like not only the attachment of care and safety, but also the companionship about learning together and exploring together.
Hmm.
So as I see it, we as humans, we grow into being social animals. We learn how to socially learn.
Yes.
And we do that by having a really good attachment from the beginning, because then we become social beings, and then we can start to socially learn from each other. And then we can take part in society, in our cultures. because we have this ability to be social beings.
Mm.
And I think it's the same for the horses. They are, of course, very different from us, but there are similarities too. But they are social animals as well, as very dependent on their herds, on their families. So they do go through the kind of the same stages.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think because they are so similar, like we are in some ways, they work beautifully in therapy because we can easily project onto them stuff that we are dealing with, like family structures. We can see that in the herds, interrelationships between two individuals, and everything that has to do with distance and being close and being distant, and rejections, and solving stuff together or on your own, and all this. But they are at the same time different enough for you to be able to see your projections.
Right.
So they become this point of reference for you. Yes. So because we often get the question like, okay, why horses? Why do we work with horses in therapy? And I think it is that they are actually having this perfect balance of being both different and similar to us. That is helpful. Then there are other stuff, of course, going on too. But I think that's why we can have this, and why we have had it for so long. Like horses has been part of our human cultures for so very, very long. Why the horse? Why not the deer or the zebra or any other?
Absolutely.
The horse. It was the horse. And I think that we can have this interaction with horses just because of this kind of very balanced differences and similarities. We have some, I wouldn't call it inbuilt, but we have some ability to communicate with them. Good enough for them to understand us, and for us to understand them. And then there is tons of other stuff that goes around and happens in this space.
I would imagine so. One of the things that I've been talking, I was speaking with Sarah about, and that, seems to be a topic of conversation, is the way that our nervous systems tend to co-regulate, or maybe dysregulate, if we're in dysregulation, that might show up, within.
That is a part of it, that we can both regulate, and we can also dysregulate with them. We can take advantage of them being regulated, and if we are not, we can regulate with them. And then we can also affect each other the other way, but by dysregulating each other. So that's kind of because we have the same central nervous system, so that works. But what I feel sometimes is that we miss out on, is that we talk a lot about now that horses are so similar to us because of this. So we say that horses get PTSD and they dissociate and they have all the things that we can have. But then we actually miss out on some of the human stuff that they don't.
Right.
So they don't, I don't think they ruminate, for example.
No.
No, I don't think they suffer from moral injury. I don't think they, if they chase you away, for example, I don't think they have guilt over that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they experience guilt.
No, I don't think that. And a lot of other things. Dissociation, for example, is a lot about people disconnecting from parts of themselves. So part of you might have feelings that you are not really able to deal with. So you can dissociate away from that. So dissociation is not only the disconnect from your body, but also from your inner different states. And I don't think horses have that.
Interesting.
So by naming what goes on for them with the same terminology as we use for us, we are mixing stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
By then doing that, we take away both from us humans, because we have human stuff they don't have,
Mm-hmm.
but we also take away from them because we don't really see them.
And what's really going on for them.
If we put this on them, we will again have put lenses on, not us being able to actually see what goes on for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not saying that they are lower down and we are more important and more developed as humans and bigger brains and all this. It's just that there are differences.
Mm-hmm.
And if we keep on saying that they are actually so much like us, we will I don't think we take away from what it is to be a horse.
Yeah. What that actually means.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we don't see them anymore.
Interesting. I would love to come back around to that dissociation piece. So when I go out, at times I've worked with horses that I might have labeled dissociated, you know, in terms of the dull eye, the kind of the robotic nature, shall we call it?
Yeah, there is a this shutting down or
Yeah,
disconnect. Yeah.
disconnect. Yeah, you know, it often paired, of course, with learned helplessness.
Yes.
In a collapsed state within the nervous system, usually. And so, what would you, you know, looking at a horse like that, how might you differentiate that from potentially a human response to trauma or stress, you know, consistent stress?
Yeah, and I think that's a problem, that we actually are mixing up trauma with stress.
Yeah.
Because we have stress responses, and as a traumatized human being will have a lot of stress responses, and
Oh,
that
yes.
would be the same as for the horse. You know, the dysregulation and the high blood pressure, for example, and all this. That's the same because we are mammals. But the other part of the dissociation that goes on in your mind, in your thought, your belief systems. I don't think horses either go around saying, I'm not worthy, or
No.
nobody likes me. Or,
I feel not enough.
no, yes, I'm not enough. No, but that's what we put on them if we keep on putting our human constructs on them. So, so I think, yes, it is very, very important that we see that they can have the same stress responses.
Yeah.
But saying that they are traumatized kind of implies that they have the same thought patterns and belief systems and being constructed in the same way as we are, and they are.
Yeah.
But then we miss out and learn about how it actually is for them instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a whole other conversation, but I think it's fascinating to see that, you know, typically horses and animals in the wild don't develop the same stress, sort of the ramifications of stress, shall we call them.
They do become stressed, as I mentioned, this research
Yeah.
that I just read. They get impacted by stress. So, but that's kind of part of being alive.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And death and accidents and suffering, that's part of being alive.
Yeah.
And that's also, if we go back to the discussion about how we try to protect them and bubble wrap them, we try to protect them from that too. And I think that's also a projection from us, like, okay, suffering is very terrible. We don't want them to suffer because we have a hard time dealing with it in our lives.
Yes. Yes. And yet some of that stress might be, you know, growth building or
it is, because that's how
strengthening.
you build resilience and how you build, and that's also actually part of your creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your learning abilities and developing.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So keeping a horse very safe all the time, not putting him through anything that could potentially stress him at all, and protect him from everything, he will not learn. He will not learn about his environment. He will not learn about himself and his own capabilities and how to relate to you, to his environment, to anything.
Yep.
And
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot there. We're coming to the close here, but I'm like, oh, there's so much more.
You hear my passion and my blah, blah, blah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
But
So
it's hard to
great.
stop talking about
Well,
it.
and I know that everybody out there is going to be so appreciative, and this sort of answers some questions that have been, opened up by this within the podcast up until this point. So it's just been this excellent,
Yeah.
Starting to really bring it all into more clarity.
And
So
I think if we want to learn about horses, we need to separate out ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's hard for all of us.
Very
Really,
hard.
really hard. Yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Oh, well, to those out there listening, the invitation is there. It's not an easy process, but look, I'm still alive. Katarina's still alive. It might be stressful, but
It's fun. It's fun, and it's very
really fun.
Yes.
I love it. Initially it feels really scary, but the curiosity grows, and then it's just like so interesting. So
yeah, and you're in awe of them because they are
absolutely.
fantastic, amazing animals.
Yeah,
Beings. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Aww. Well, thank you so much, Katarina. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Tell our audience how they can find you.
Oh, they'll find me at mimercentre.org.
Okay.
And MiMer Centre is spelled with the English version.
Okay, perfect. Yes, is it CENTRE? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
And
That's great. And so yeah, there's lots of things on the website. I've been over there. There's so many great resources. So check it out, everyone, mimercentre.org. And I will also include that on the wholehorse.ca podcast page. So you can go there, find the link. And I'll include some resources there about what Katarina's up to. And yeah, thank you to all that have tuned in today and have taken the time. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Katarina, for joining us all the way from Seattle.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been absolutely great. Yay, good. All right, everyone. Have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon.